Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony. I am the chairwoman of the Committee on Finance. I'm calling to order a regular meeting on Tuesday, October 1st at 5:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please take it?
Chairwoman Anthony.
Present.
Vice Chairman Taylor is absent. Councilor Angela. Present. Councilwoman Graves is absent. Councilor Sanchez.
Present.
We have 3 present and 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And I would like to welcome Ken Cheverini from the City Solicitor's Office. Thank you for joining us. You can move closer if you'd like to.
You're welcome. I think you're good. I know we were friends.
And then I'd like to thank our clerks, Clarissa and Donna. Thank you so much for staffing us today. And I am wondering if I might have a motion to take an item out of order. I'd like to move, take item number 6 out of order. May I have a motion?
Second.
A motion made by Councilor Anderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 6?
Communication from His Honor the Mayor dated September 13th, 2024, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1013 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31, passed in 1987, he is this day appointing Cindy McKenna of 28 Bainbridge Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island, 02909, as a general citizen third category member of the City Plan Commission for a term to expire on January 31st, 2029, and respectfully submits the same for your approval. Ms. McKenna replaces Ms. Birdie, who has resigned.
Ms. McKenna, if you would come up to the table, we'll swear you in. Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming this evening. I'm sorry we're not a full complement here to talk to you and act on your application. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little about your background and why it is that you want to serve on the CPC.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Providence in the Mountain Hope area. I bought my home on Federal Hill in 1990, I think, around there. And I went to college in San Francisco. I got my bachelor's degree in urban studies, and then I went on to get a master's in city planning from MIT and a master's in education from Harvard, grad school of education. So planning has been, just something that I care passionately about, and always have been very interested in how it works in Providence and what goes on in the neighborhoods in the city. And I would just be really thrilled to be on the City Plan Commission. My sister was on it 10 years ago, so it was, I was thrilled when the mayor approached me about it. It's an exciting time for the city, so I would be honored to be able to use my skills and experience to help in that capacity.
Thank you. Well, I think there's no question you have the skill set. Your expertise is, of course, aligned with planning. And I so appreciate the fact that you're willing to serve. So I'm going to open it up to questions from our counselors. Any questions or comments?
Question on this.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Councilor Sanchez.
Like you said, yeah, I've known Sid for quite a couple of years now and very involved in a lot of community stuff and cares deeply about the city. My just quick question is, have you followed any of like the comp plan stuff? And I know like the CPC played a role, not necessarily at this point in it, but I'm just kind of see if you have any opinions on kind of the direction the comp plan is moving in.
So I did read it, and I intentionally didn't read about what the CPC was saying about it because I didn't want to be biased. So I have not, but by design, because I thought that, I didn't want to come in with preconceived ideas about how they're handling it without giving the benefit of how they work and, you know, what the big picture is first, so. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Vanderwall.
It's nice to meet you. We've actually met, I've heard so many nice things, so welcome back to City Hall. I had two big questions. One was around, and I was so glad to hear that you were really focused on like community engagement, and that's so throughout your resume, and I was wondering, so one of the critiques, I guess I've heard of the CPC is that the community doesn't feel like they have adequate ways to engage, or that the discussion that happens at the CPC seems to not reflect what happened, like what the community's concerns are. And the specific example I'll give from like your home neighborhood is in that Hope neighborhood, there was a large development proposed, there have been 56 units on a single family lot. And the CPC passed it, which, you know, is the right and all the things. And because there was going to be a zone change, and the only concern they had raised was like wondering if it was student housing, where it's like nowhere near school.
Right.
And then we had like 200 people show up to a community with like very different concerns. And so it just seemed like it was this very different, like the concerns about how it was reflected in the comprehensive plan for members of the community who like lived in that community were very different than how the CPC saw what they thought that the relation to it was.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, how do you use your role on the CPC to like, you do that kind of community engagement or reflect the community?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a communications background as well as community, and it's just, I think that everything really does come down to communications and listening, and it's just when we're on the precipice of, you know, we know we need housing, and we know that we need affordable housing, and we know that we have a lot of gaps, but it also doesn't mean that every empty lot should be filled with massive amounts of housing without any thought into how it fits into the fabric of the neighborhood, or how the existing neighborhood will interact with it, and what their ideas are about it. The first thing that I learned, it's funny because it's no secret that I worked in the mayor's office in the 90s, that it was a very top-down, you know, kind of methodology.
Yes.
A little bit top-down.
That's so different now.
But, so when I went to MIT, the first class that we took was called like Gateway to Planning, and it just completely upended the way that I thought about planning. And the specific, you know, the discipline was, it has to come from the community, and that was like a foreign, you know, concept to me coming out of working, you know, for Buddy. And so it really reorganized the way that I think about planning. So, the community is central, it's first and foremost, and so you don't, and when you're talking about land use, you know, if we don't live in that neighborhood, we don't know what the land use patterns are, and there's kind of no piece of paper that's drawn up by a developer that's ever going to capture those nuances. So I think that, and I hope that I'm answering your question, but I think that the more input from the community, and I don't just mean the same people over and over again, but really getting out to, you know, the uses of the area and how people interact with their space that they call home on a broad scale, I think is the only way that we can effectively build. Because, like, for example, I live across the street from the middle school, you know, and so the way that I interact with the street, or the way that people see the street, if you're a developer and you just came down in June, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you come on a Saturday, it's totally different than what it looks like at 8 AM or 3 PM, you know, on a weekday. And those nuances, you don't catch unless you ask. So I think that, you know, in my capacity, I would love to work towards a way to be better at asking and better at listening, better at probing, because, you know, you can ask a question and you get an answer, but you really have to be skilled enough to kind of probe to get what the real answer is. So I just think it comes down to, like I said, to communication and listening and asking the right questions and asking again. Yeah, so, and participation is key.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. How do you feel about eliminating, like with your planning background, eliminating certain uses that we might think there are already enough of in the city? So instead of, like, the example I'll give is Councilman Sanchez and I work with Councilman Boyes to eliminate self-storage facilities. So you not only can't have them by right, we have enough. We're saturated.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pushback on the CPC for like eliminating any use. I
Right.
just thought maybe we should just make it a little more difficult. How do you feel about, like, not necessarily that specific example, because we did that, but other things where it's like, maybe we've decided collectively as a city we have enough gas stations, we have enough X.
Yeah.
How do you just feel about that?
I mean, again, I think that a city, and this is what I love about planning, is like an evolving organism, you know? And so, and trends that come along with, you know, all of a sudden, storage spaces are cheap to build and they're whatever, and maybe there's a hedge fund behind it that has a lot of funding to do it, so all of a sudden you have this wild proliferation of it. I mean, I think it's our responsibility as citizens, as stewards of the public land, to, you know, peel back the layers and look at what's going on, you know, here. One thing, you know, that I was very proud of when I worked for the administration back in the nineties was, at that time, we had lots of big box stores looking for big footprints of land, and all the mill buildings had the biggest footprints, and there was no protections on them. Kenny can actually probably remember this. And so we had to, you know, calibrate to, there was no restrictions to coming in and knocking down Atlantic Mills or Eagle Square or Alco or any of those buildings, because we hadn't evolved to a place yet where we looked at those as historic properties. So there was a groundswell movement, you know, from Eagle Square to save that parcel, but what that turned into was, you know, for me, and specifically Patricia McLaughlin, who I worked with, looking at like, oh, wait a minute, pump the brakes, like, these buildings are significant to our, you know, history as an industrial city. And we just had to freeze everything and look, and when you look back at those buildings now, and sometimes I drive by, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that would be a closed, a shuttered,
It would be like a
big
big
box
Walmart,
store.
yeah.
Yeah, that would have actually closed by now, you know what I mean? So I just think we have to be nimble and open-minded to really look at how uses evolve over time. So I don't know if I answered your question. But I think, you know, to your point about the storage spaces, and I always thought that that was very, you know, that it always popped in my mind too. And it was cool to see when Councilman Sanchez started to look at that more critically, you know? And so I don't know what the next thing is that you'll need to look at critically, but I think that you have to keep looking. And if you are using your curiosity and have a finger on the pulse of how the city is evolving and what that looks like, and not even like coming with a value judgment of what I think it should look like, but of what you're seeing evolve, you know, and being able to look at that objectively and weigh and balance that, and then use, you know, input to guide your decision making on that. I think that's critical, and if you can't, if you're not doing that, then do something about
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Excellent, excellent. Councilor Sanchez, any more questions?
Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was wonderful.
I
To get your
jet
insight.
lagged and babbling.
We caught you just at the right time. Okay, is there a motion? Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, motion to approve made by Councilor Ingersoll, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. We will be recommending your approval to the city council. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, if you would please remind us to read item number 1.
An ordinance repealing ordinance 2017-52, number 492, an ordinance establishing a tax exemption and tax utilization agreement for the Aspen Roofing for 2220 Blackstone Street and 220 Weston Street Rear.
Okay, I think we have our policy director, Aaron Gardner, who will be coming along with Mike Murphy. I'm gonna have both of you come to the table. Is anyone else here to talk about TSAs today? Okay. If I can just swear the two of you in, or the clerk will. Sarah, that's it. Who you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and
My deputy city is like,
Aaron Easter Gardner, Deputy Chief of Staff, Community Policy.
Okay, thank you both so much. I thought we might, even though we have items 1 through 4, which are some sort of repealing or canceling of TSAs, I thought you kind of could start by telling us under what circumstances we do cancel or repeal the TSAs.
Thank you. I'll comment and say that the 4 items that you had in C2 that are ordinances that are being repealed, and then 2 resolutions that are cancellations, that would be because the 2 resolutions were tax stabilization agreements that were entered before the council's 21 Act, so it was an administrative CSA. So it was enacted a little differently than the other two are ordinances. So myself and, Mike Murphy, we actually are part of the, city's TSA working group, which, has representation from all the departments that, have the same reviewing TSAs. We discuss, monthly, we talk about some of the new applications that are incoming, and, seeing when those applications can potentially be approved and added to a council docket. We talk about non-compliance and, property owners who may be behind on their, tax bills, et cetera. And we decide, if we should, send out non-compliance letters. Sometimes, especially given some of the older TSAs, a lot of, legalese in there and things that we have to do before we actually send a non-compliance letter. So we discuss those things. And we discuss communications that are coming in from TSA applicants and folks who actually had the benefit already. And then we just make recommendations on how we should move forward with, some of the items that you see here on the list, which all of these, for the most part, are basically being repealed. So that's the background. If you'd like, I can just get into the reason why 220 was recommended here.
Can I just ask, can we just know that all of the reasons why you would be, is it a long list on how does the TSA become non-compliant?
Yeah, they would become non-compliant by simply, not paying, the taxes according to the rate that was set out in the ordinance or the agreement. Just like any, property taxpayer, if your tax bill is due, basically we charge, interest, et cetera. But for our TSA recipients, what we do is we actually send them a non-compliance letter, and we give them 90 days to come to compliance, which would be, for the most part, paying your administrative fees or actually paying the property tax bill. We generally give them time to come into compliance.
Okay, so non-payment.
Yes, for the most part, non-payment, but then sometimes there are property owners that, reach out and say that circumstances have changed, selling the property, and we would be repealing those reasons as well.
What about, may I just ask, what about the requirement, I know that may not have applied to all of these, but the requirement that construction start within a year?
Right, I think that, that is one of the, most popular reasons for having a non-compliance letter sent out. But so when construction hasn't started within, 12 months of the, agreement being executed, I think it's according to, it's section 3.1 of the ordinance, that we actually will reach out to them, speak to them at the fact that you are in non-compliance because construction hasn't commenced. And then that is up to the city. We can determine for the situation and their request, whether or not we want to extend that or not, whether it makes sense to extend it. But given the, financial environment, I think we've been very, lenient in speaking with these property owners to, try our best to get them back in compliance.
And what about the adherence to the other requirements that they are supposed to, MBE, all our first orders, things like that?
Yeah, there are requirements, for example, that, they enter into a, first source apprenticeship agreement. So honestly, most of the property owners and developers, they try their best to, work with first source to, work with it. But the supreme majority of the reasons why we would be recommending repeal is mostly for, non-payment and for the lack of a start of construction.
Thank you, that helps. I don't know if anyone has questions, counselors, if you have committee members, any questions before we get into the specifics of each?
No, that's helpful, yeah.
Okay. All right, then let's start with number one.
Okay, so number one was a project that was originally taken on by the Aspen Group, where they wanted to create a medical facility, actually. And the project, after everything that happened with the pandemic, it really wasn't penciling for them anymore. And they actually sold it to Marathon. And Marathon actually has new plans for this property, whereas they actually requested that we cancel the TSA because the project is now going to be a 178 residential development. And then not only that, but on the sale, they actually have the a warranty deed that shows that it has, long-term restrictions for, deed restrictions for affordable housing. So we feel very good about that. The applicant plans to pursue a deed, if I'm not mistaken.
And that you said that, Loose Marathon is the new owner?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Any
Yeah.
questions on that? Yes, Councilor Annabelle.
Are they planning, did you just say they're also planning to pursue a TSA to build, or they're?
They are not.
Oh,
Financially, it pencils for them if they're able to, apply for a law. And
Oh,
based on
ALOT.
and based on the deed restrictions that are actually on the record now, it's very likely that they, would follow.
Yeah, just for my,
Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
just for my knowledge, because I'm on the PRA, we just approved, 8 million, 5.5 in the housing trust fund and another 2.5 in out loan. So it's mostly all
oh, great. That's great.
by a developer, for the record, that is known to put units up fast.
Oh.
So,
Approved fast.
yeah.
And, Mr. Murphy, do you have anything to add to this particular item?
I'm doing a wonderful job. They have preliminary, applied for A1 status.
Oh,
Okay, wow.
Great, all right. Well, then I'm going to take a motion on agenda item number 1.
Motion to repeal.
Second.
Okay, motion
So
made.
is should it be approved?
It's going to be motion to approve the.
It doesn't sound right saying this.
Ordinance.
Yeah.
Yes. Motion to approve is made by Councilor Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Anderball. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Madam Clerk, please read item number 2.
An ordinance repealing ordinance 2017-21, number 281, an ordinance establishing a tax stabilization plan for 68 Dorrance Street.
So for this property on 68 Durham Street, we actually received communication from the developer that they were giving up their rights to the tax stabilization agreement and asked for us to move to repeal. And as I understand it, the property now qualifies under APA, which was processed by the assessor's office last year. So that would be the reason for the repeal there.
And I'm sorry, was processed and approved for 8 law treatment?
Yes.
When was that exactly?
2023 for the 2024 tax year.
Okay, and who owns that?
Yeah, Case Mead Associates LLC.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Case Mead Associates LLC.
Well. I have a motion.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask if anyone had any questions.
Like, we can't have both, so I'll make the motion in time. But does this one, if it's 8 lot, what percentage of, low income housing is it?
That it is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like 9 out of the 44.
9 or 44? Does it also have commercial space at the bottom?
On the first one, correct.
Does the commercial space also have 8 lot treatment?
No, it's not.
Motion to approve the law.
Second.
Motion made to approve, made by Councilor Anderbaugh, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 3?
Resolution canceling the tax stabilization agreement made between the City of Providence and Presidio 156 LLC for the real property located at 156 Westminster Street.
So my comments here would be that this also came before the TSA working group. As I commented on before, these developers had 12 months to actually break ground and begin construction. Inspections and standards have recognized that that did not happen. And we sent a non-compliance letter out to the developer, and they actually responded to us saying that, they apologize. It's the pandemic and the rising cost of construction isn't going to allow them to move forward with the project anymore. So they willfully say that we can repeal the TSA and no longer use it.
Okay, any
Just a
questions?
question.
Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
I know you said it already, Aaron, but just to clarify, so the 2 bottom ones are in the old TSA format and the top 2 are in the new one? So
Yes, yeah, they were enacted directly from the agreement with the administration and the developer.
when it's in the resolution form?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. No problem.
Yes. question, sorry.
Okay, that's one more question.
Yes, yes.
What's
Counselor
gonna-
Anderson.
Are they doing anything with the property, or is it just gonna be?
I'm unaware of what
Maybe not
their
yet.
future plans are. I just know currently that they're not able to move forward. If you have any points of that.
Currently, they do not have any permits for to do any other renovations, we've been communicating back and forth with them, correspondence.
Okay.
Yes, Counselor Sanchez.
So I guess like in terms of, what has happened, since they got that TSA until now, like what tax bill have they paid, I guess, is one
Yeah.
question.
So, we never implemented any of the fiscal impact projections, we have just continuously built on that actual assessment at the tax rate. So there's been no loss to the city.
Okay.
Great.
And that's one of the things that the developer said in a letter, is apologetic letter. He outlined the fact that there had been no revenue loss to the city, and that's how we were sitting on the project. So, close. So,
Excellent. That is excellent. Okay. Is there any motion?
Motion to approve the canceling of the TSA.
Second.
The motion to approve is made by Counselor Sanchez, seconded by Counselor Anderson. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, and we have our last one.
Resolution canceling the tax stabilization agreement made between the city of Providence and 46 Dyke Street Holdings LLC for the real property located at 46 Dyke Street.
So this is, one where the main emphasis behind moving forward is an unpaid tax balance. So the property owner is actually behind $23,000 in unpaid property taxes and a smaller amount, $156 in administrative fees. So when a non-compliance letter was sent out to them, I can't remember whether or not it was sent to them 23 or 24. But either way, the developer came in and they set up a payment plan with the city collector. And we were hoping that they would follow through on that, but to this date, they hadn't made the payments that they agreed with, and they are now unresponsive. So at one point, they were responding to our correspondence, and now we haven't heard that, but they hadn't made any of their payments. So the recommendation is to move forward, cancel the stabilization agreement as well.
And so can you just give me the timeline on that? I mean, how much, between the time that they entered into the payment plan and
Yes,
then became unresponsive?
Absolutely. So the unpaid balances were from tax year 23. They sat with Maria, our tax collector, in May of this year to come to an agreement. And again, at this time, they just did not follow through on the agreement that they made with the collector. And we are kind of left with no choice but to move forward this way, or at least recommend it. I don't get anything to add to that.
No, the only point I would make is that, the TSA expires next year regardless.
Okay, Counselor Havergal.
But they still own 46 Dyke Street, so when this is canceled, they'll just start paying full taxes theoretically, or there could be some action against them if they aren't paying taxes?
Yeah, my understanding from the way I see it, having the stabilization agreement, even though it's almost ramped up to a high value, I mean, if they had an issue paying this, I would imagine that there's other financial
Yeah.
situations happening. And if, this property owner doesn't come to the table to some type of agreement, this could be subject to a tax sale in the future.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, too much to say other than this is, you could say controversial piece of property. I mean, they do a lot of good things, but in terms, this is the Dye House in Oney.
Oh, I thought it was in front of the Dye House.
46 Dye Street.
Yeah, I was just looking at the map, I thought the Dye House was behind it.
That's the Dallas.
Oh, it is the
It is
Dye
Dye
House.
House. I
Oh,
mean,
it
it's
is.
like-
Yeah, the map is right.
Yeah, I mean, it's actively in use, so I mean,
Yeah.
they should be paying a
Yeah, it's actively in
discounted
use.
tax bill, is all I have to say.
Thank you. I mean,
Thank
that
you
makes
for
Yeah, they like-
bringing this before us.
Yeah, they like host events.
To give them credit, yeah, they're
Yeah.
good community
But like they're
partners and
actively.
stuff, yeah, I mean, rooms, I think, go for like 400 a night.
Yeah.
In Oneyville.
It is nice.
Yeah, it's a nice bit.
Okay, well, any other questions? I really appreciate it. So, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion was made to approve item number 4 by Councilor Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Vanderpump. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you both very much for coming to present tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, if you would be so kind as to read item number 5.
An ordinance relating to Article 4, Chapter 17, Section 17-192F of the Code of Ordinances, Disability Waiver Request, William Diorio.
If you would kindly come to the table, we'll swear you in. Okay, yes. Ms. Young, have the privilege of testimony about Well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And we are hearing this disability waiver request.
That's correct.
Okay.
My name is Ronald Koya, as business manager, secretary treasurer, local unit 1033. With me tonight is Mr. Diorio, William Diorio, who's a 35-year employee of the Providence Water Supply Board, which is serving as a water treatment operator, correct? Water system operator, that's incorrect. We are here tonight to petition the committee with respect to Mr. Diorio's application for disability benefits under the retirement ordinance. Mr. Diorio suffered a work-related injury back in April of 2020 and had continued to work despite that injury for a full year until April of 2021, when he underwent surgery with respect to the injury that he suffered a year earlier. He remained out of work for more than a year. In April of 2022, he returned to work, not in his capacity in his normal job, but he returned to work pursuant to an offer of suitable alternative employment made by the city to himself and the workers' compensation attorney. He remained in that assignment, which again was not his normal assignment, for another year or so until June of 2023, when he underwent a second surgery related to his injury, and he remains out of work because of his injury from that, since that surgery, which was in June of 23. As the committee knows, under the ordinance, a disability application must be filed within 18 months of the surgery date. Clearly, in this case, that wasn't the case. Mr. Diorio didn't file his application until after that time, and it's our position that under the ordinance and with regard to our argument regarding the waiver, that we seek the waiver and ask the committee to grant the waiver for several reasons. First, Mr. Diorio was not under any actual knowledge of the requirement under the ordinance to file within the prescribed period, which is the case with many of our members who are in a similar situation, who simply don't know that that's a requirement under the ordinance. I believe at that time, there was nothing done by the board, by the retirement board, that would have given notice to those that were on workers' comp that this statutory prescription was in place. Secondly, Mr. Diorio, again, like many of our members, always wanted to go back to work. At the time that it was due, which would have been in October of 2021, he was recovering from a surgery which he thought would have put him in a position to come back to work at some point in the future. As it turned out, it did to some extent, because he was able to come back, albeit in an alternative work position than his normal position. But as it turned out, again, he was out. So he remains out now. And again, we think the circumstances here are just and right to afford him the waiver, which would permit his application simply to be considered by the board. The merits of his application are another matter, as you know, but this granting of the waiver simply allow the board to consider his application. We'll respectfully request respectfully that it be granted. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Correa, can you just tell me the 18 months what would the, so is it 18 months from the original injury?
My understanding is 18
2020?
months from the date of injury, which is, his date of injury was April of 2020, which by my calculation would have put the deadline around October of 21.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you guys for being here. My first question is, so when was the waiver requested? Like now? That's that.
We are,
When did
hearing
that?
today is the request. We're requesting the waiver pursuant to these procedures.
So once like the 18, this process comes up like once every 7 months, so I just kind of need a refresher. So once, you wanna appear before the retirement board, if the 18 months have passed, like, is this kind of the first step?
Yeah, the statute requires the application to be filed within 18 months. If you don't require, if you don't file it within the 18 months, you need to get a waiver by the council, which is really an ordinance
Right.
permitting the late filing.
Thank you. And then my next question, you mentioning a lot of folks not being aware of those 18 months. Is that the responsibility of who, like, who can we push to,
Yeah.
I'm sure like the union could do a little
It's a
bit,
good
like,
question.
what can the city do? Or
I mean, I always felt that, the city was best suited to be the entity to provide notice, instruction as to those, people that are on workers' comp of the 18-month waiver. We certainly, in our office, know of it and try to inform people of it, but it's hard to capture that audience that's on workers' comp. A lot of times we don't know who's on comp, when they went out on comp. So, it's kind of a word of mouth thing, but I think that, again, with regard to the board itself, I think that's the best.
So if I may,
Yes,
so I'm very familiar with the disability request and the process. So several years ago, several administrations ago, this came up. And there's been a coordinated effort as a result of finance directing both police and fire as well as human resources to send out tickler letters, essentially to say, hey, you're approaching the 18-month requirement. You have to take some action, and alerting the employees. They do it now, and it comes out of workers' comp for 1033 and non-union folks, and then police and fire do it separately. So that process does happen. Apparently, Mr. Diorio predates that, but it's 18 months from the date of the injury. So if it's 18 months in a day, you're out of luck, and you cannot, once you go to retirement, they'll do the math and they'll say, sorry, we can't even accept the application. So with the disability waiver, if it's approved, Mr. Diorio will go in, fill out his application, they will accept it, and then act upon it, send him to 3 doctors, submit his medicals, and then it will come before the retirement board. And then just like any application, if it's approved, it doesn't impact the determination. The board will still make a total review of the application, approve or deny it. His rights will be there and the board's rights will be secured too, to deny the application. All this committee is saying is giving him the opportunity to submit that application.
I just have it's kind of like besides the point of what we're talking about, but so someone can be on workers' comp. There's no like limit on how long is it on.
Right, so so depending upon when they went out on comp, so if they went out in the early 90s that predate the changes, they just stay on comp. There's no mechanism to get them off of comp. After the change, there's a thing called a gate. So after so many years, once they approach the gate, you have to send them a notice saying you approached the gate. If the employee can prove that they have no employment skills, they're not employable, and there's a whole process. They go to the Trudeau Center, there's an overview, and they will make that allegation that they can't work. The city would say, oh, they can do this, this, and this, and the court will decide if in fact they're unemployable. If they're unemployable, they make it through the gate and continue to receive benefits. If they don't make it through the gate, they're kicked off the workers' comp.
Should I ask how many years the gate is, or is it different for
I
scenarios?
think it's 5 years, Ronnie? I think it's 5 years. But like, even when they go through the gate, we still have the ability
Right.
to send people to be examined and stuff. I mean, we looked at the people that predate this gate. The problem is, even we've tried to do disability requests. I think there's only a couple now. Most have died. But I think the problem is, while the non-police and fire folks are out on comp, they don't pay the contributions into the system. So even if they were to retire and get a waiver, the benefit is not there for them. It's not significant. They'd rather stay out on comp and receive that check.
Interesting stuff.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for the tutorial, Solicitor.
I do have one
Yeah.
One
okay.
other,
Yes.
if you look at the waiver, it's not 17-192 F, it's 17-189 F, the section
Oh, so do we have to
of the Code of
And
Ordinances.
that we amended.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, may I have a motion to amend agenda item number 5 to reflect a change from section 17-192 F to section 17-189? So moved. All right, motion made by, Counselor Anderbaugh, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye, all opposed. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Absolutely.
Very nice job.
You can close it now.
So glad we can. Can I make the motion to approve the disability waiver request? So,
Second.
Okay, motion to approve made by Counselor Anderbaugh, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye, all opposed. Thank you so much for.
Thank you
doing it.
very
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we have, Madam Clerk, can you please read item number 7?
I'm sorry.
no, you're still doing it.
That's okay.
An ordinance in amendment of the Home Rule Charter, Article X, Section 1006 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence entitled Department of Public Property in Chapter 21, Revenue and Finance, Article 2, Division of Purchase Order, Section 21 to 27, Competitive Bidding of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence.
Okay, as you may recall, this was Shelley, Counselor Shelley Peterson, who introduced this originally. And I think the problem was, as I recall, this would have, this is a charter change, and you can't do it by.
And wasn't this already done in the charter?
Um,
I thought that this was in the last charter review.
I think there was an amendment, there was a charter change, but it didn't address what she is looking to
Oh,
do.
okay, but we can't do it here. Okay.
So I think that's, so she's agreed
Okay.
that we should continue this indefinitely. I have a motion.
Motion to continue definitely.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Anderbaugh, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. Item number 8.
Resolution calling on the Providence Public School Department to cease the service of providing crossing guards to private schools in the city until all of the public schools have been adequately staffed.
Okay, and maybe we have a reason, I can't remember what happened with this.
Yeah, I think, the prime sponsor of this was Councilman Reyes, and this was in committee for a little bit of time, and, he understands that there's been a lot of things that have changed since he first introduced this, and there's so many education discussions coming that he's happy to have this continue indefinitely.
Okay, any questions or concerns? Okay, and I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to continue definitely.
Second.
Motion to continue indefinitely made by Counselor Anderbaugh, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye, all opposed. I think that concludes our business tonight.
Motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, are we meeting next Tuesday, is that a plan?
I don't, yes, it is, I think, actually. I am gonna say yes, because, well, first of all, maybe not on the, let's take the motion to adjourn is made by Counselor Anderbaugh, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye, all opposed. With that, I think our meeting is concluded. Thank you everyone for coming.